Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets come out of the All-Star break battling hard against the top-ranked Cleveland Cavaliers, but ultimately fade in the end. We take a look at some key contributors and the debut of one Killian Hayes as a Brooklyn Net. We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms, and let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Get over to FanDuel.com today. And Doug, we're out of the All-Star break. We know that we want now, as we said last episode, to just watch this team play hard, watch this team compete, potentially win. While the final score is 110-97 and the Nets do fade pretty hard in the third quarter, the first 2.5 quarters was entertaining, engaging basketball where, frankly, you felt pretty good about the way this team was playing against the Cavs.
Well, after being featured prominently on the Brooklyn Nets, the Bridge episode, where your boys here were part of the opening, sort of like what did you call it? Just audio.
They put us in the A block. That's where they stuck us right at the top.
I mean, it was for sure the A block, and I will say they pulled a quote from both you and me, and came as a surprise. No one told us. Means they're listening. Hey, Brooklyn Nets folks, thanks for listening.
How are you? Yeah.
My part, much better than yours. I noticed.
Is that right? Huh.
That was what I immediately thought.
The only thing that I caught was my voice was heard first. That was really it came
Save
in
the best for last.
Tones. Yeah.
Save the best for last. Yeah, no. And then so I started off on really good vibes going into the game. After seeing that, I'm like, well, okay, we're all on the same team, obviously. If we're just all being part of the same productions, obviously. I wasn't in the production meeting, but I'm just going to assume we're on the same team. Yeah. Then we go into that, and I just had this epiphany yesterday. I was like, I'm just rooting for wins on here on out. And I put it out on Twitter, and people thought I was being sarcastic. I'm really not. I'm just.
That's your own fault. For me. Just to be clear, that's your own fault. You've established a certain expectation that everything you say has zero realistic value.
There's a fool me once, fool me twice vibe going on that stuff over there for sure. So I haven't done myself any favors when I do want to say something serious. But but in this case, going into this game, I'm like, you know what? It's just set. The die's cast. Like, they are where they are in the standings. It's going to be pretty hard to go all the way down. Life's too short. I just can't sit here and be mad if they're gonna. And I really was never mad, but like we can't sit here and just root for these losses. And of course, they lost once I reframed that. But the overall, long story long, going into this game, the expectations I think have shifted for this team. And for the first half of this game, it was like, hey, this is a really good, not really good. This is a above average, cohesive basketball unit that really likes playing together. Like they want to upset people every single night. You can tell. And if you play with your food too long as another team, they're going to make it hard for you. And that's kind of what we saw in this first half of the game. It kind of gets away in the third quarter, but all in all, under the right framework, this is a fun team to kind of root for and watch. It's just, there's just like these other kind of subtexts that are going on.
110-97 is the final, but they were up. They were up 7 in the third quarter with 8 minutes to go. And then Cleveland goes on their run, and all of a sudden you're down. But by the way, the fourth quarter is 27-20 in favor of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, they are in the mix of this game, even into the fourth quarter. They have their own little surge there. The funny part was, and I think, I was talking with Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs a couple days ago because he's, meeting up. He does a great job, by the way, of doing whip arounds the league for all these matchups that the Cleveland Cavaliers take on. And I said, listen, man, it should probably be a blowout. Like, as excited as I am about watching this team down the stretch and some of the players developing, it's the Cavs, and they should want to dominate. But Danny pointed out, you come out of the All-Star break, like, it's always a little funky. Everybody's been off doing other things and, kind of relaxing a little bit. And that is maybe some of the vibe that I got here, because the shooting to start this game for both teams was not what you call a masterpiece. End of the first quarter, the Nets, they said, we are going to be dedicated to the three-point ball. And they successfully knocked down 10% of them in the first quarter, 1 of 10. And it never, it got better certainly from there, but that's a low bar to crest. It wasn't exactly, 24-19 in the first quarter. It picked up at the start of the second for sure, but this was a slow moving train for both teams early, which, as we know, from a defensive perspective for the Nets and from an offensive output where they've struggled to obviously get over 100 in most games of late. That's the type of game that you can stay in and you can battle with, right? It's going to require a lot of defensive dedication and hopefully some off shooting for the opposition. They got that early, and it's going to be really hard for them to find that scoring power as you get into the third and fourth quarters when you look across and you see Donovan Mitchell. I mean, I'll just point stop with Donovan Mitchell. When superstar on the other team, it's going to be hard to deny that for the last 24 minutes of a game.
Yeah, look, they held them to 40. The Nets held the Cavs to 48 points in the first half. This is the number one offensive efficiency team in the league, right? Like by I think a pretty easy number. And so
this is one of the teams I pointed to. We talk about who they played, in the last 10 games versus who they're going to play coming up, right? Offensive output of some of these teams, like Cleveland.
Yeah. So the Cavs' offensive efficiency is 119.8. That's easily number one in the league. The next closest is Denver at 118. So nearly 2 whole points per 100 better offensive efficiency. And then it dips down. Like that's the same difference. The difference between 1 and 2, I'm doing the quick math here, is the same difference as like 2 to 5, right? In terms of offensive efficiency, like they are well above the group, and the Nets had them frustrated. We're getting into their bodies a lot. We're making shots really tough. And again, you can see like they have a good team defensive strategy. Jordy's clearly instilled this. You have to play really hard. Zaire Williams continues to ball pressure guys kind of like 3/4 court, and that causes problems for other teams' guards. It's a high. It can not work out for you because if you get a screen set high, like they can get lost a little bit. And so it's kind of like this, it doesn't like raise your floor, but it kind of raises your ceiling defensively. But overall, like this is what we've seen time and time again from the team is that they just want to go out and try really hard. Frankly, there's probably 2 things. If they knock down like 3 more 3-pointers and D'Lo doesn't get hurt, and I think we're probably might be having a different conversation here. Like Cavs shot terribly too, so you can't do we make some, but you keep missing.
We get one good nothing.
Yeah, right. So I guess it's not really fair to do that. But like D'Lo was +9 in this game, and he leaves with I think a sprained ankle. So overall, like if you're looking through the framework of a team that wants to play hard, that wants to give other good teams their all every single night, like this is what you want. We just had these competing narratives as the season's gone on about what it is. But overall, watching the team play can be a fun experience. It's just that the results get you screwed up about where you want to be. Although ultimately in this one, it ends up being probably where, at the end, maybe this is like one of those games where it's like everyone gets what they want. Like the team plays really hard. They stay in it. They are clearly hanging with the Cavs early. They're clearly getting them scared. And then ultimately they, maintain their draft status.
No. We're good. We don't bother with draft status anymore around these parts. But coming up here in a second, some interesting stats about the Brooklyn Nets this season when it comes to playing against some of the better teams in the league. Plus, we got our first taste of Killian Hayes as well. How did some of the bench contributors look in this game? We'll do it all coming up here in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you, my friends over at DoorDash, NBA fans, get ready. They swish you save thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during this season, this 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off and order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. You can get a game day feast going. You get those late night cravings, lunch on the go. With Dash Pass, you can get your meals with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, you throw in this NBA offer. It's all good to go. Sign up for Dash Pass. Be ready to save when any player in the NBA scores 50 or more in a game. Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Use the promo code NBA50. That's easy to remember. Just the league plus the number of points. From noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders. And participating merchants must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, the Nets come out of the All-Star break 110-97, falling to the Cleveland Cavaliers at home. But before we get into bench players, Killian Hayes, and other thoughts from this game, this I find interesting. Now including this game, unfortunately, the Nets, what do you think their record is against teams above 500?
Oh God, I have no idea.
I'll tell you that including last.
Tell me the number of games. Tell me the number of games.
They've played 20 games. They've played 20 games against teams above 500.
8-12.
Buddy, when we talk about, and this is content that the Brooklyn Nets can come and use if they want to, after the loss last night, 8-12 against teams above 500. They're 12
and 23. I'd have to be
23.
diabolical to set it up like that because I obviously had no idea how many games we're even talking about. But yeah, buddy, I'm not. You know what? You see no reaction. You see like this is Jordy when D'Angelo Russell hit the 3-pointer the other night against the Rockets, where it was just like one little second of smile, right back to business, business because there's work to do. I'm not gonna parade around being like, yes, I got another one right. This is what we do.
I think actually this is the way Jordy Fernandez was in the post game. They said like, oh, I didn't know as much of a reaction. He said, I'm not going to parade around about it making it. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I designed the play successfully for that. But the other notes here in that is 12-23 against teams below 500. So the Brooklyn Nets, have played up to the competition over the course of this season. Really, overall, they are 0-3 in overtime games. By the way, within 10 points. 28 games, 7-21. But how about this? When they're within 3 points, if they just could have hung a little bit tougher, a little bit longer, in 9 games, they are 5-4. So this team, like all of those things, by the way, like I think does support the Jordy Fernandez as head coach, the tough play, right? The willingness to dig into these games and be competitive. It means that, hey, if you're close down the stretch, this team does have a sample size that says like we can stay competitive. We can pull out some of these wins. Now, they weren't close down the stretch in this game against Cleveland Cavaliers, so it didn't matter. It only contributed to some of the areas that they have not been so successful. You mentioned D'Angelo Russell goes out in this game. You do get Cam Johnson, 29 minutes, 6 of 11, 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. I got to tell you, there was a couple of plays here. One was Cam Johnson. He just had it off the dribble, and he was coming from the left side and curled on the dribble, though, up to the top of a key, around a screen, and just like pulled a jack up 3. But it looked smooth and fluid in a way that the highest athletes of the NBA look. It caught my eye in some type of way where I was like, Cam Johnson, baby, this guy is ready to cook down the rest of the season. The other one for me was Trendon Watford when he shimmy shook behind the back dribble and then found, of all people, Day'Ron Sharpe in the corner for a knockdown triple. Like there were those sequences in this game that I think if you're just looking for the fun stuff, looking for the development of some of these younger guys, they were there. All those moments were there in this game. Those couple of ones stuck out to me for sure.
Yeah, eventually you're going to just get outclassed skill-wise. Like when the other team has, Spider and and Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, right? Like it's just like at some point, talent's going to win out. The Nets have, you mentioned all those close games too. Like that's why the Pythagorean expected win-loss is lower, right? It's because they've won a couple of these, and then they've gotten kind of blown out in other games, and Pythagorean just takes number of points. It's like not perfect, right? But it kind of just like gives the idea of like, hey, you just have scored way less points than your opponent. Like your record should be like this. It can get a little thrown off by blowouts, but blowouts. But overall, I think that from this team, from Cam Johnson's standpoint, like he continues to impress. Like he actually somehow the efficiency goes up in this game, which is weird. When you because they end up really not being able to score, but he's still above 50% from the field, 50% from 3, I guess 75% from the line, but he's not really worried there. It was just that late in this game, they just couldn't really. The offense just comes. They just don't have enough guards. Like when D'Lo's out not on the court, and then Killian Hayes, fine, was going to work his way into the mix here, but they just don't have enough way to generate enough offense. Like they scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. This has been the theme. That fourth quarter theme has been the theme for this last stretch, except the defense has just been so amazing. Like they had not scored many points. Even in these wins, they didn't score like less than 100 points, which is kind of impossible in the NBA now on a consistent basis. But you saw it when D'Lo left the game. Like, where does the offense happen? Where does the ball creation happen? Where does who's beating their guy one-on-one? Like they just can't, they don't have any guys like this. And so it just really grinds to a halt. Like it's fine. We're not going to go crazy about it. They're doing the best they can with the personnel they have. Frankly, they're probably doing better than they can be with the personnel they have. But you see it, right? Like, you can pick out 3 offensive plays because those are the only ones that stand out. Everything else is an absolute rock fight for them to try to get the ball in the basket.
And that's the funny part where you see like Tyrese Martin bringing up the ball at one point in transition, and that also clicks in your mind where you go, Right. Not a lot of opportunity for transition basketball. It's not a knock on Tyrese Martin, but it's just you wouldn't expect him to, hey, grab that rebound off the rim and the outlet pass and really push the pace. It's hard to try to get those sequences to really function.
And
properly.
by the way, the only ones they have, like, sorry to interrupt, but the only ones
No,
they
no.
do have in this game, because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, we don't see this. The only time they've really get out of the transition is if they have a guy, and this happened twice at least, where they have a guy who actually gets the steal. Like Keon Johnson gets the steal.
Zaire
like,
Williams had one of these too.
And Zaire Williams another one where he tried to track the ball down, and then Zaire almost had another one where he just like couldn't win the foot race. Like those are the only times they get transition baskets is when the guy gets a steal and then that guy gets the ball. Otherwise, there's no transition. Like they're not getting out in the break against anybody. So it's like you steal and you run as fast as you can into the basket. Great. That's a transition basket. Anything else, we're walking it up the court.
And now, by the way, I'm going to tell you right now, though, like, okay, you gave up 110 points to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who shot, let's just call it 43% from the field and 28% from beyond the arc. The Cleveland Cavaliers for the season average over 122 points a game. Yeah. They average 49, almost 50% from the field. They average 39 from beyond the arc. So this is the part, I think, too, where you have to separate the idea of that was still a really good defensive game for the Brooklyn Nets, right? Like when we were talking about this last stretch where they were winning and the defense was playing so well, it was like, are you going to be able to sustain it? They sustained it. The problem is going to be offensively, can you find a way to still have that output? That's why we talk about Cam Thomas, excuse me. If you put Cam Thomas in this game, I'm not going to tell you they win the game. I am going to tell you that they're in this game all the way through because that's what you need. The guy you can put the ball into the hands of, who can go down the court and get you a bucket by himself, let alone help that offense flow a little bit more. But they did their job. It is hard to hold the Cleveland Cavaliers to 110 points on a consistent basis in the league this season. So when you can hold a team like them 12 points, 13 points under their average, we can hold them percentages under in all these key categories, that is a success. Jordy Fernandez is not going to get to the podium after the game and say, hey, boys, moral victory. But you can look at the schedule going forward and say, we can still do the thing that we were doing for these last 6 out of 7 games that we won, right, before the All-Star break. We can still do this. We do need to find a way to break 100 here at some point. We do need to find a way to get this offense flowing a little bit better as we move along. Injury to D'Angelo Russell, that could be a concern because he has been such a key cog in what they do. Coming up here in a second, let's spotlight some of the guys off the bench. Let's talk about the debut of Killian Hayes. Nothing surprising here in terms of a player, even though he's been working at the G League level. It always takes time to find your NBA rhythm. We'll do that to close things out in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The game tips off. NBA action is just getting started. No better place than to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can get live bets going through the game. Maybe you miss opening tip-off, no big deal. Maybe you want to get come back at the end in the fourth quarter. You're staying in the action. You're there all the way through. If you're looking for a bigger payout, grab one of the same game parlays. Guess who covered? Nets go into last night's game over on FanDuel plus 13.5.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do I'm going to do the back of the napkin math here. They kept it within 13. That's how you cover, baby. That's why they're one of the best in the league against the spread. That's what you're going to get over on FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, so as we tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets, episode 110 to 97, they follow the Cleveland Cavaliers. Want to talk about Killian Hayes here. Worth noting, from the field, nice game for Keon Johnson, 8 of 19. Continues to struggle finding that three-point shot. And, oh, by the way, we mentioned about D'Angelo Russell going down here. He still matters with 5 assists in 18 minutes. So the offensive part of his game is not just the scoring, but he had a bad night. 1 of 7 from the field, 1 of 6 from beyond the arc. I mean, again, sometimes you go back and you look at these things. Zaire Williams put up 7 3-point attempts, only got 1 out of there too. This is where we've always talked about, you look at the box score and maybe you see something that isn't, shouldn't be true. Well, when you look at those 3 stats, you think, well, the Nets should have been losing by 30 in the second quarter. This thing should have been done, right? Like, so again, this isn't just doing rose-colored lenses on everything, but the fact that they were able to battle and stay in this game all the way through was a good sign. Trendon Watford continues to play well. His box scores are always going to be handful of rebounds, handful of assists. Did have 3 turnovers in this one, but good shooting from him. Got to the line a bunch as well. And then we get to Killian Hayes, 21 minutes, 2 of 6 from the field. Unfortunately, 0 of 3 from beyond the arc, but did have 3 assists, picked up 3 quick fouls in this one too. That was what I was speaking to about getting up into the flow of it. the speed of NBA basketball is faster and quicker, and the players are better than G League. I'm not surprised that we'll talk about maybe a couple of games of Killian getting his legs underneath him.
He looked fine, I thought. I thought that was kind of to be expected. He was clearly like commanding the offense at times. It looked like it wasn't
like he had played in the NBA a lot in his career, right? Like this is not a guy.
Yeah. I don't think. It just kind of looked like it was didn't hit any threes. Like, what are you going to do? But it's a 10-day contract. Like, we'll see how long this goes for. But I think overall there was nothing that really popped off the page. But there was nothing that really kind of scared you either. Personal fouls. I think the game was probably moving a little quick for him on both ends. But that's just to be expected. Also, going back to the box score stuff. If your non-Cam Johnson starters are going to shoot 2 for 19 from 3, you're just not going to win the game. You can't win. There's 2 for 19 from everyone else that's not Cam Johnson. And it's not even like he took a crazy volume. It's just not a recipe for success. And again, these are, and those guys too, maybe not D'Lo, but Keon Johnson, Zaire Williams, they're struggling from the 3-point line. This has been the problem. And if they're not going to hit the threes, what are you going to do? But it's not like they just ran bad. These guys, it's been kind of a problem, and that problem clearly isn't solved. And I don't know what the future sort of holds for them, but you just can't look at that box score and think, if your starters don't make threes in the modern NBA, we can pretty much call it.
Two things that stand out to me here too, and you mentioned I think we'll keep an eye on Killian Hayes, right? He's going to have a couple more games to try to see what he has here, and I think we'll talk about next week. What do we need to see in this sample size to assume that maybe he's going to spend the rest of his season up here with the Brooklyn Nets? But one, have to note 7 combined blocks for Nicholas Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe, 3 for Claxton, 4 for Day'Ron. That's Claxton getting back to some of the things that have always been exciting parts of his game. Day'Ron Sharpe didn't have a good shooting night, but even he had a couple of sequences, as we talked about with D'Angelo Russell, nice offensive ones, makes himself available in the lane, doing a little bit more with the ball in his hands, dribbling around the paint. Again, not a great night for him. And the other one too here, though, was just on a high level. D'Angelo Russell goes out, only plays 18 minutes. There is a part of me, when Cam Johnson is shooting the way he's shooting in this game, Keon Johnson takes 19 shots in this game by the end of it. You also have 10 shots from Claxton. These are different type of shots, obviously. 10 from Day'Ron Sharpe. But you get 11 from Trendon Watford. You get 7 from Jalen Wilson. 11 attempts for Cam Johnson. There probably is a world for me over the rest of this season when the numbers start to crunch and you get down into it. I kind of would like to see Jordy and the Brooklyn Nets find ways to be let's try to keep putting the ball in one of our most experienced veteran shooters. Now, the problem is he's not an on-ball guy, right? He's not going to take guys on one-on-one consistently, but he's your best, most consistent shooter. And I do think at some point you need to skew the volume in that direction. Keon Johnson is interesting because combined with the 3-point shooting, he does attack downhill. He does go towards the basket. So I think more opportunities come for him, but that does stand out to me when he's nearly doubled up Cam Johnson's shots by the end of this game.
Some of that's funneled because they're just going to want him to shoot a little bit more than anybody else. Right. And so it's there's a little bit of a funneling going that way where they're just not he's allowed to take more shots. If you watch, this isn't
him, what are you doing out there, Keon?
No. And most of the shots are probably of the, decent shot variety. If you watch, if you watch the defense kind of handle him, they do play off him at the 3-point line. They don't need to feel like they need to body up, because if they did body up him at the 3-point line, he could probably blow by some of these guys, but he can't because there's no real need to guard him from beyond the arc all that closely. So then he tries to get downhill, and it's a little harder because he's small, right? And so it's going to be, the shots going to be harder in the lane. So it kind of all doesn't work in his favor. This is why when you really can't, it's such a problem. It's so easy and it's so difficult, right? On the one hand, I think basketball is incredibly complex. If you watch it on a night-to-night basis and you try to figure out everything that's going on, except for ball go in, ball don't go in, there's so much happening that you are hard pressed to keep up with it. It really takes, and people want to say, oh, they get it. There's a few people that really get it, and you really know when they get it. Guys like Lucas Kappa, really gets it. If you watch film breakdowns, he gets it, but he also needs to go back and watch it, right? Because dissecting, watching. So it's incredibly complex. So there's that part. And then there's the other part where it's well, if you just don't hit threes, and it's just not gonna be that hard to guard you because, because we just, okay, if you're 6'3" or whatever Keon Johnson, it was he 6'3", 6'5". Yeah, 6'5". You're 6'3", 6'5", 185, and you don't hit threes. I kind of know how. If you're an NBA level defender, like I kind of know how I'm going to guard you. I'm not going to need to press up against you and close you out too hard. And good luck getting in the lane because you're just too small. And if you have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen behind you, we'll clean it up. Not too worried there. So it's like it's one of these things, and I want him to be able to hit the shots, but right now, 29% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. It's not NBA ready. He's been good, and I like watching him play, and I want him to win. And he's still only 22, which is crazy. But if you can't hit these shots, it's like every team knows exactly what to do for you. And then going on forever about this, but that's how you're allowed to take 19 shots, right? Like that's how you get up 19 shots because like all those shots look good in the moment. But they're just not.
They're good looks. They're good looks.
Oh yeah, he's like not forcing it. Did you watch this game and think at any point that he was like chucking? I didn't.
No.
Like,
And exactly. Yeah. And it's like this isn't. Well, he doubled up Cam Johnson because he was like, "All right, everybody, clear out my time." It was like, no,
exactly.
All the combination of elements you mentioned, bad 3-point shooting for him. You have the defensive backstops around the basket. If you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, great, go ahead, take the shot. And if you're Jordy Fernandez, if you're the Brooklyn Nets, Keon Johnson's out there. You're gonna tell him every single time, take the shot. Like you're supposed to take this shot, but until it goes down and you start to get the pressure up near the top of the key and you start to open up those pockets behind him for some outlet passes or to be able to attack the closeouts, it's going to be a lot of the similar results. And as you mentioned, under 30%, it's just not going to be good enough for Keon Johnson at this level. That being said, they got coming up here, just to give a little bit of insight here, they're going to go down to Philly, but then they're going to get Washington. They're going to be home for OKC, but then they're also going to host Portland. And then they're also going to go to Detroit and San Antonio and Golden State. So there's that little 3-game stretch there if we talk about teams that are playing pretty good basketball, but there's going to be some winnable games here. And I think we're going to talk about all these same themes, right? It's where the shooting percentages early in the game, what's the status of D'Angelo Russell with this injury is going to be massive for the remainder of this season. But the seesaw of who you play on the schedule and what this team does on the court night in, night out, they're going to win some of these basketball games. So I think we'll be talking about an effort like we saw last night, even with some of the bad percentages. That's going to win you. That's going to win you a handful of these games going forward. If it's just not the Cleveland Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell across the way from you.
I think that like just the way their effort again, excuse me.
Oh,
the effort has
talked about effort. It's one of the
I know the effort has lent itself to like that they're going to stay in some of these games and they probably are going to be able to pull some of them off. Like I still stop and like hesitate because I just know that some of these have been they have had luck. Like they really should be like have 15 wins, right? Like their Pythagorean record is higher. So the
8 out of 20 against the top teams over 500 record we talked about at the top of the show. Take away 3 of them, right? If you said they were 5-15 against teams above 500, that would meet expectations of the season and of the skill level, right? And just like that, they're 17-30, 17-38, not 20-35, right? And that's it's fascinating how big of a difference that makes, right? Just a couple of games here or there, a little bit of luck in a great way for this team, but you're talking about a very different perspective on where they are this season.
All right, we are going to get out of here. A couple housekeeping notes. I did it again. I forgot the guy who gave me the load management thing. Hold on. I'm just going to get it. This is terrible. But I'm going to get it.
They got these. I think I put this 15-game stretch in while Doug pulls that off. They went up and they won the first 2 in it. I think playing Charlotte and Philadelphia might have been the first 2 of the 15-game stretch. Might even go back a little bit further than that. But we'll see how they perform. I had said 5.5 was the over-under on those 15 games. And that takes you out, I think, to playing all the way against like at Cleveland March 11th, something like that. So there's a stretch of games to keep an eye on. I've done it. Now Doug will tell us.
All right. Yeah, these are actually I have two tweets here that are going to go together. So I said that we need to replace tanking with a term that's easier to understand and has better branding because everyone just sees tank and just thinks of like the worst case scenarios. J Harp Starpula, love Twitter names, said you got to acronym this. LTTM, long-term talent maximization. That's it. So the Nets are they're not in tanking mode. They're
at a
LTTM
time,
mode.
TBD.
Yeah, there's that.
At a time, TBD, LTTM.
We're LTTM, long-term talent maximization. And here's the other one, because I knew I was going to get this. The Spurs thing made me remember this. I knew the second Wemby went down, I was going to get some tweet about this is why you don't draft number 1, because this is everyone wants to jump at me and tell me all the number 1 draft picks that don't work out. They don't like mention guys like LeBron, right? So like what in the list. But I got this tweet. I'm not even gonna say who this was. Wemby, I'm going to close on this. Wemby out for the season is a cautionary tale about being drafted number 1. How did Zion work out? Marcel Fultz, Ben Simmons. I mean, Wemby had like a blood clot, and he was like the most generational, the easiest generational talent pick number 1 of all time. And it's like, this is why you don't want it, folks, because you just don't know. You just don't know.
I won't throw there's somebody else. I didn't even go find it. Somebody said about when Killian Hayes was coming up to play with the Brooklyn Nets. It was the same thing. They go, this is why drafting high isn't always the answer. And I was like, okay.
Hey, can we do the guys that are good? Can we do the guys that are good now?
Right.
I know you got your list. I know you got your list. And that list is great. And by the way, the fact that Wemby just found his way onto the list is like we're at peak insanity, right? Like it's like, well, this is why you don't want to do it, because some mystery blood clot. So are we allowed to give the other list
again?
Yeah, are we allowed to give the other list?
We forfeit the pick. We don't even want to pick. We can't risk it.
It's so great, man. It's so great. It's like, anyway, so I wanted to like, it's a cautionary tale. I was like, hey pal, it's not. So anyway, with that being said, make sure you follow me and Adam on Twitter, at Adam Armbrecht on Twitter, at Doug Norrie on Twitter. Give us some of these insane takes. I love it. I absolutely love it. Maybe they'll find its way onto the show, good or bad. You never know. Right. Follow at Doug Norrie, at Adam Armbrecht.
The Nets continue to cover throughout this season, and it did make me think a decorative cloth used to cover a bed, and that is a bedspread.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. One of the all-time. Who said it?
Oh, Webster.
Oh, there you go. I was gonna say, because I was gonna say it's not one of the all-time great quotes, buddy. It's one of the all-time great poets. And we'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Bedspreads. Basketball. Yeah.